The 19-year-old alien royal mocked the human, so he turned and walked away silently. HFY Stories. Jadon Cross stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the glossy surface of Zithra Prime's royal landing platform. The air smelled different here, tinged with a faint metallic note, and the sky above shimmered in a pale lavender hue, a sight humans had never seen before. He adjusted the strap of his satchel across his chest and took a deep breath. Every detail mattered. Every gesture could be read and misread in this alien world. The palace rose before him like a jewel, carved from a crystalline substance that glowed faintly in the ambient light. Its towers spiraled toward the sky, reflecting the light of Zithra Prime's twin suns. The humans accompanying Jadon looked around in awe, murmuring among themselves. He ignored them. His attention was fixed on the palace doors, which opened before him with a hiss, as if the building itself were breathing. Waiting inside was Prince Kale, a young alien of 19 cycles, known across the system for his wit, arrogance, and biting sarcasm. He was tall, lean, and had an almost predatory grace. His eyes, deep violet and glowing faintly, swept over the human delegation with casual contempt. When they settled on Jadon, Kale's smirk deepened. "You are the human diplomat," he asked, his voice smooth but cutting, echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged hall. "I must say, you do not look impressive. I expected your species to be larger, taller, more robust." "And your attire," he said, gesturing to Jadon's plain uniform, "is charming in its simplicity. Tell me, do humans dress this way to save time, or is this some form of primitive ceremony?" He, however, kept his expression neutral, his eyes calm, observing every movement of the prince. Instead of responding, Jadon did something unexpected. Slowly, deliberately, he turned away from Kale and walked toward the inner courtyard, ignoring the murmurs and glances of those around him. The hall fell into a stunned silence. Zitherans were not used to humans behaving this way. Most would have snapped back, shouted, or at least defended themselves. But Jadon walked quietly, deliberately, as though his feet were carrying him on a path Kale could not influence. Kale's smirk faltered slightly, replaced by something closer to curiosity. No human had ever ignored him so calmly. His violet eyes narrowed, studying Jadon's back. The young human moved with quiet purpose, unshaken by insult or audience. That calm, unbending confidence was strange. It was powerful. The palace courtyard was vast, filled with geometric gardens that glowed softly under the twin suns. Strange, flowering plants swayed gently, although there was no wind. Jadon paused to observe them, noting how the leaves reflected light in subtle patterns. Every detail mattered. The Zitherans prized observation and precision. He would give them proof that humans could excel in their own way. A Zitheran aide approached, bowing deeply. "Prince Kale commands your presence," the aide said, though his tone carried doubt. He is curious why you walked away." He did not hurry, yet he did not linger unnecessarily. His silence spoke volumes. Kale followed him at a distance, intrigued. The human's composure was unlike anything he had seen. For centuries, Zitherans had judged humans as weak, impulsive, and easily provoked. Yet here was one walking away from him without fear, without resentment, without anything. It was almost insulting, and Kale found himself oddly annoyed. When Jadon reached the fountain, he knelt slightly and placed a hand near the surface. The water shimmered and reacted, rippling faintly to his touch. He smiled subtly, thinking of the technology humans had brought with them. Subtle sensors and energy readings had been integrated into his clothing. He had learned to observe without being obvious. Every detail of Zithra Prime was being recorded in his mind. This was not just a diplomatic visit. It was a lesson. Kale finally approached, his voice softer now, as if testing a new hypothesis. "You do not respond to my words," he said. "Do you not care that I mock you?" The other humans seemed unsure, glancing nervously at Kale, while the Zitheran aides whispered among themselves. Jadon, however, stood as if nothing had changed. He waited. Patience was a human strength that many Zitherans underestimated. Kale's pride bristled. He had spent his life perfecting the art of ridicule, of bending weaker beings to his amusement. Yet this human could not be bent, could not be amused or humiliated, could not even be rattled. Kale had encountered many species, many diplomats, many warriors. None had such quiet power. "You walk as though you own the place," Kale said, his tone sharp again, though edged with fascination. "Do you not fear me?" Kale's violet eyes widened slightly, not with shock, but with interest. Humans were unpredictable, and unpredictability was dangerous. Yet this human did not project arrogance or aggression. He projected control. The court reconvened in the central hall, but the incident in the courtyard had already caused murmurs. Some of the older Zitharan nobles exchanged looks of confusion. The humans had arrived thinking they were entering a court of superiority and dominance, yet the first impression was not what they expected. Jadden, silent and unassuming, had already shifted the balance of perception. Later that evening, Kale summoned his advisors in private. "The human," he said, pacing, "he is unlike the others. He does not respond as expected. He does not react to insult. He walks away. We will see what he truly is capable of. Observe first, respond when necessary." Humans may not have been physically dominant here, but intelligence, observation, and restraint were weapons in their own right. The following morning, Kale observed Jadden from a balcony high above the palace grounds. The human moved through the gardens with calm efficiency, interacting politely with aides and servants, always observing, never showing irritation. It was a silent challenge. Kale realized that words and ridicule alone could not touch this human. He needed a new approach, a challenge that tested more than patience. As Jadden approached the palace entrance that morning, he caught Kale's gaze. They held it for a long moment. The young alien's expression was unreadable, yet something flickered in his eyes: curiosity, annoyance, fascination. Jadden simply nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. Then he turned again, walking with calm purpose, silent and unyielding. For the first time, Kale felt the stirrings of respect, or perhaps it was something more complex, a recognition of potential. The human had not bowed, had not flinched, had not shouted, yet he had already won a subtle victory. The prince knew that the next days would be interesting. Jadden, meanwhile, understood the unspoken challenge. Patience was his ally, observation his weapon. He would not rise to mockery with anger. He would not compete in arrogance. He would act quietly, thoughtfully, and allow his abilities to speak where words could not. The court of Zithara Prime had not yet seen the full measure of the human, but the first impression was clear. This was a species not to be underestimated, a mind unbroken by mockery, and a presence that demanded attention without force. And as he walked silently past the alien prince once again, Jadden knew one thing. In this game of intellect and patience, humans had a strength the universe often overlooked. The next morning, the palace of Zithara Prime was alive with activity. Jadden Cross walked through the grand halls with a calm, measured pace, his eyes scanning every detail. The walls were carved from the same crystalline material as the exterior, catching the light and splitting it into colors humans had never seen. Servants moved quickly, their motions precise and efficient, as if every step had been calculated. Prince Kale watched from a balcony above, curiosity flickering in his violet eyes. Yesterday had been unusual. Humans rarely ignored mockery, yet this one had done so with perfect composure. Kale was determined to see how far this composure could stretch. He had always prided himself on his wit, his sharp tongue, and his ability to manipulate those weaker than him. But Jadden Cross seemed different. The prince decided that words alone would not be enough. He would set challenges for the human, subtle tests designed to provoke failure. The first would be a display of intelligence. Kale summoned Jadden to the Hall of Knowledge, a room filled with ancient Zitharan texts, glowing with energy and hovering in the air. The hall was a labyrinth of floating books and holographic panels, each one containing information gathered over thousands of cycles. Human, Kale began, his voice echoing through the chamber, you are to demonstrate your intellect. Solve the puzzle before you. Most species fail. Humans, I am told, are clever, but I wonder, are you? He studied the puzzle carefully, a holographic grid of shifting symbols, each symbol changing in a pattern that was familiar to Zitharan scholars but unknown to most outsiders. He had seen puzzles like this before in simulations on Earth, and he approached it calmly, breaking down the sequence in his mind. Kale observed closely, expecting hesitation or error. Instead, Jadden moved slowly but steadily, aligning the symbols correctly, his eyes sharp and focused. Within minutes, the puzzle lit up, signaling completion. The hall hummed with energy as the ancient system acknowledged the solution. The other humans looked astonished, and even some of Kale's advisors whispered among themselves. Impressive, Kale said, his tone tight. Perhaps you have more capacity than I expected, but that was only the beginning. Jadden entered the hall quietly, observing the room. He noticed the patterns of interaction, who bowed to whom, which gestures indicated respect and which indicated superiority. He mimicked the movements subtly, adapting to the customs without appearing stiff or forced. When Kale approached with a thinly veiled insult, questioning the human's awareness of proper greetings, Jadden smiled politely and followed the correct procedure flawlessly. The nobles murmured in surprise. Many had anticipated humiliation. Instead, they witnessed grace and competence. Kale's smirk lingered, but it no longer held the same confidence. This human was not reacting out of fear or arrogance. He was responding with intelligence and observation. After the gathering, Kale arranged a more complex test, a debate on galactic politics. Zitharan history was long and convoluted, full of treaties, conflicts, and alliances. Kale hoped that Jadden would be out of his depth, that he would stumble over details and reveal human ignorance. Tell me, human, Kale said, gesturing to a holographic projection of disputed planetary borders. How would you advise Zithara Prime to handle this situation? Be precise, or your species will seem foolish. The neighboring system values trade and stability above conquest. If we propose a partnership and offer technological collaboration, the chance of conflict decreases. Simultaneously, we secure our borders without aggression. Kale blinked, momentarily caught off guard. The human had not only understood the problem but had provided a solution that benefited all sides, avoiding conflict while asserting influence. Kale clenched his jaw slightly. He had expected arrogance, aggression, or fear, but not competence. Jadden's calm demeanor and effective reasoning were challenging Kale in a way he had not anticipated. Over the next few days, Kale continued his tests. He arranged simulations of palace security systems, expecting Jadden to be clumsy. He created diplomatic dilemmas designed to confuse him. He even subtly tested the human's endurance by extending ceremonies and demanding prolonged attention. Each time, Jadden navigated the challenges with quiet skill. He noticed flaws that even the most experienced Zitharan aides missed. He observed patterns, anticipated moves, and acted with patience rather than haste. Kale watched, increasingly fascinated and frustrated. In one notable incident, a minor crisis occurred during a ceremonial garden walk. A small energy conduit malfunctioned, creating a short circuit that could have injured nearby nobles. Jadden noticed it before anyone else and calmly redirected the energy flow, preventing harm. The incident passed quietly without panic, but Kale's advisors noticed. A human had prevented what could have been a disaster. Kale approached Jadden afterward, his voice carrying a mixture of irritation and curiosity. You are different. Most species would panic or stumble. Humans are supposed to be weak, impulsive, unprepared. Yet you navigate these situations calmly without hesitation. How? But understanding the situation and acting wisely is always important. He helped a lost Zitharan child navigate the palace gardens, earning quiet smiles from the staff. He deciphered an ancient text during a formal ceremony, providing insights that even Kale's scholars had missed. Every action was deliberate, unassuming, and effective. The young prince felt something unfamiliar, respect mixed with frustration. He had underestimated this human, and the realization was uncomfortable. Kale had always believed that wit and mockery could control or humiliate those beneath him, yet Jadden had proven impervious to such tactics. Late one evening, Kale observed Jadden alone in the gardens. The human was seated on a stone bench, quietly reviewing notes and holographic records. He did not speak to anyone, did not seek attention, yet there was an aura of calm authority about him. Kale approached silently, curious about the mind that could remain so steady in the face of ridicule and pressure. "You walk through my palace as if it belongs to you," Kale said, testing him again. "Do you not fear what you do not understand?" Understanding is what removes fear. Fear is only dangerous when it guides your actions blindly. Kale found himself observing Jadden more than testing him. Every movement, every glance, every decision was analyzed. He saw that the human strength was not physical but mental and emotional. Patience, resilience, intelligence, and composure were weapons in their own right. The palace staff began to notice a subtle shift. Conversations whispered about the human who walked calmly past the young prince without fear. Some began to wonder if humans were indeed as weak as they had always believed. Kale remained outwardly indifferent, but inwardly, he was calculating, strategizing, and, though he would never admit it, learning. By the end of the second week, Kale arranged a final trial before the Interstellar Council arrived. A complex series of strategic and social tests designed to push Jadden to his limits. The human would need to demonstrate intelligence, diplomacy, and endurance all at once. Jadden prepared silently, observing patterns, analyzing possibilities, and planning his actions. He did not speak of stress or concern. He did not react to the undercurrents of mockery and expectation. He relied on the same principle that had guided him from the start: observation, patience, and thoughtful action. As the first challenge began, Kale realized something important. He was no longer merely testing Jadden. He was learning from him, being forced to reconsider assumptions about humanity. The young human had walked past mockery with dignity, answered challenges with intelligence, and revealed strength in quiet ways. Kale, for the first time, questioned whether his world had underestimated a species capable of so much more than anyone had imagined. And as Jadden moved forward in the first trial, composed and silent, the palace knew that the human's true strength had only just begun to reveal itself. The day of the Interstellar Council had arrived, and the palace of Zithra Prime buzzed with activity. Delegates from countless worlds gathered in the grand hall, each bringing their own customs, languages, and expectations. The air was thick with curiosity, tension, and the subtle hum of technology. Jadden Cross walked among them with calm focus, taking note of every detail: the hierarchy of greetings, the subtle cues in body language, and the unspoken rules that governed interaction. Prince Kale observed him from above, leaning casually against the balcony railing. The human had already proven himself in previous challenges, navigating puzzles, diplomacy, and etiquette with quiet skill. Now, he would be tested in a different way: not just intellect or poise, but adaptability under pressure and the ability to navigate complex, unpredictable situations. Kale wanted to see if Jadden could maintain composure when everything was in motion. The first session involved a series of strategic exercises designed to simulate interstellar crises. Holographic projections displayed unstable planetary systems, disputed territories, and potential conflicts between species. Delegates were divided into groups, tasked with proposing solutions. Kale deliberately placed Jadden in a group with several Zitherans known for arrogance and impatience, expecting him to falter under pressure. At first, the group bickered. Zitherans argued over priorities, their voices rising in tone and intensity. Jadden listened quietly, observing patterns of thought, detecting flaws in reasoning, and noting the hidden biases in each argument. When it was his turn, he spoke clearly and concisely, offering solutions that addressed multiple concerns without creating offense or conflict. "You see," Jadden said, pointing to the projection, "we can stabilize the system by coordinating resource sharing among the planets while establishing a neutral monitoring council. This prevents immediate conflict and gives all parties a role in maintaining balance. Each faction benefits without sacrificing territory." He acted with logic, patience, and consideration, a combination rarely seen among Zitharans, whose culture prized showmanship and immediate action. The second exercise was a test of social intelligence. Delegates were paired with representatives from different species, some hostile, some indifferent, and tasked with negotiating agreements under strict time limits. Kale placed Jadden with a notoriously difficult alien ambassador known for aggressive tactics. The ambassador attempted to intimidate Jadden with loud speech, complex gestures, and veiled threats. Most humans would have faltered, but Jadden remained calm. He listened carefully, acknowledged the ambassador's concerns, and responded in a measured, diplomatic manner. Instead of confrontation, he sought solutions that allowed both parties to claim success. By the end of the negotiation, the ambassador was quietly impressed, having achieved a better outcome than expected. Delegates whispered about the human who did not react to aggression, but instead turned it into collaboration. Kale's smirk faded slightly. He realized the human's strength was not in raw power or rhetoric, but in subtle control, strategic patience, and the ability to influence outcomes without force. Next came the endurance trial, a simulation of continuous problem-solving under pressure. Delegates were confined in a simulation chamber where multiple crises erupted simultaneously. Communications failures, energy shortages, and logistical challenges. Most participants panicked or became frustrated, their focus breaking under the complexity. Jadden moved calmly from one problem to the next, prioritizing tasks, delegating where appropriate, and using observation to anticipate failures before they happened. He adapted continuously, correcting small mistakes and preventing major ones. Hours passed, yet his composure never wavered. Kale, observing from a control room above the simulation chamber, felt a mixture of irritation and admiration. He had always believed that humans relied on luck, emotion, and improvisation. Yet Jadden demonstrated something else: foresight, reasoning, and a quiet, enduring strength. Kale leaned forward, studying the human as if trying to understand how one so ordinary in appearance could perform so extraordinarily. After the endurance trial, a short break was called. Delegates wandered the halls, exchanging observations and theories about one another. Kale approached Jadden, curiosity and challenge in his eyes. "You have managed to avoid mistakes that would have defeated almost anyone," Kale said. "You are calm when others panic, patient when others complain. Tell me, human, do you not tire of constant tests?" There was no arrogance in the human's voice, no hint of resentment, only clarity, observation, and quiet confidence. The prince realized that he had underestimated the depth of human potential. The final exercise of the day was the ultimate challenge, a complex diplomatic scenario combining strategy, negotiation, and unexpected crises. Delegates were informed that a neighboring system had escalated a conflict into an active threat. Each team had to formulate a response that preserved peace while protecting their own interests. Kale intentionally paired Jadden with several Zitharans who had attempted to undermine him earlier. At first, the team struggled. Voices rose, accusations were made, and tensions flared. But Jadden remained calm, listening and analyzing. He identified key weaknesses in the proposed strategies, pointed out overlooked factors, and suggested solutions that balanced competing interests. Slowly, the team began to cooperate. They adjusted their plans according to Jadden's guidance, achieving a solution that satisfied all parties while maintaining security. The simulation ended, and the results were announced. Jaden's team had succeeded where most others had failed. The hall erupted in whispers and astonishment. Even Kale could not suppress a look of surprise. The human had navigated intellectual, social, and practical challenges with composure, ingenuity, and strategic insight. He had turned adversity into advantage without seeking recognition or dominance. Later, as the council adjourned for the day, Kale found Jaden alone in a quiet corridor. The young prince approached carefully, curiosity and a strange respect in his violet eyes. "You walk through my palace and these trials as if they are routine," Kale said. "Most would stumble. Most would react with anger, arrogance, or fear, yet you do not. Why?" He realized that humans possessed a form of strength different from his own, quiet, enduring, and often invisible until demonstrated. It was not aggression, wit, or mockery that made them strong. It was patience, intelligence, and a steadfast will. For the first time, Kale wondered if his understanding of humanity had been incomplete. Perhaps they were not weak, impulsive, or naive. Perhaps they were capable of far more than Zitherans or any other species had assumed. As the night fell over Zithera Prime, Jaden returned to the human delegation's quarters, reviewing notes and observations from the day. He had performed well, but he knew that challenges would continue. The Interstellar Council would demand more than intellect or diplomacy. They would test endurance, character, and adaptability in ways humans had not faced before. Kale, meanwhile, paced in his private chamber. The human had earned his curiosity, his grudging respect, and even a touch of admiration. Kale had mocked, tested, and provoked him, yet the human had emerged stronger, calmer, and wiser. The prince knew that the next days would be crucial, and he could no longer underestimate the quiet strength of humanity. The tension between them was no longer simple mockery versus patience. It had evolved into a subtle contest of intellect, strategy, and insight. Kale had intended to dominate, but he found himself learning, adapting, and reconsidering his assumptions. Jaden had proven that humans could succeed not through raw power or arrogance, but through observation, composure, and intelligence, the qualities that the Zitherans had long dismissed. And as Jaden quietly reviewed the day's events, preparing for the next round of challenges, Kale watched him from a distance. The young alien prince realized that the human was not just a participant in these trials. He was a force that demanded respect, a presence that could not be ignored, and a mind that could quietly outmaneuver even the most experienced Zitheran strategists. The palace of Zithera Prime, glowing softly under the twin suns, seemed to hum with anticipation. Everyone present sensed it. The human was no ordinary diplomat. He was a symbol of a species that could endure, adapt, and rise through intelligence and dignity. Kale, for all his arrogance and experience, felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar, the realization that humans were not to be mocked, but observed, respected, and perhaps even learned from. As the stars began to twinkle in the alien sky, Jaden Cross remained calm, patient, and observant. The challenges of the council were far from over, yet he walked forward silently, confidently, proving with every step that humanity's strength was quiet, enduring, and undeniable. The Interstellar Council was nearing its conclusion, and the palace of Zithera Prime buzzed with tense energy. Delegates from dozens of worlds filled the grand halls, each carrying their own interests, ambitions, and fears, most focused on political maneuvering, alliances, and displays of power. Jaden Cross, however, moved calmly through the corridors, his observations steady and precise. Every gesture, every word, every unspoken signal mattered. Prince Kale had watched the human for days, initially with amusement, then curiosity, and now with a complicated mixture of respect and unease. Jaden had proven himself through intelligence, patience, and quiet confidence. He had navigated every test, negotiated every challenge, and maintained his composure even when others faltered. Kale, for the first time, was forced to admit that he might have underestimated humanity. That morning, a sudden alert interrupted the council proceedings. A neighboring system, the Arvian cluster, had launched an unexpected incursion into Zitharan space. The situation was critical. Small but fast-moving fleets threatened supply lines and border colonies, creating the potential for widespread chaos. Panic rippled through the council chambers as delegates demanded immediate responses. Kale stepped forward, violet eyes sharp, his usual confidence tempered by the seriousness of the situation. "This is no longer a simulation," he said. "All available minds and resources must be engaged. We cannot afford mistakes." He studied the projections carefully, analyzing the Arvian formations, supply lines, and command patterns. "The Arvians rely on speed and surprise," he said calmly. "If we focus on predictable defenses, we give them the advantage. Instead, we must act unpredictably, using coordination between our fleets and the human reconnaissance drones we brought. Small, precise strikes at their supply chains can force them to retreat without large-scale engagement." Jadden moved methodically, outlining each step. He accounted for the Arvian strengths, their probable reactions, and ways to minimize collateral damage. He coordinated timing, fleet positioning, and communications in a way that integrated human technology with Zitharan precision. Each step built upon the previous one, creating a solution that was elegant, effective, and unexpected. Kale realized something profound. The human was not following orders blindly, nor seeking personal glory. He was crafting a plan that balanced intelligence, efficiency, and diplomacy. It was a new way of thinking for a species that prized power and dominance. Over the next hours, the crisis intensified. The Arvian ships approached the outer colonies, launching reconnaissance strikes and testing defenses. Jadden remained calm, issuing recommendations, analyzing incoming data, and predicting enemy movements. Zitharan commanders, initially skeptical of human input, began to follow his guidance, coordinating with precision that surprised even Kale. At one point, an unexpected Arvian maneuver threatened to cut off a supply route critical to the planet's defense. Zitharan fleets hesitated, unsure how to respond without overextending. Jadden spoke up. "We can use their speed against them. Redirect 2 smaller squadrons through the northern sector, creating a diversion. At the same time, a coordinated strike from the southern gate will intercept their supply line. Timing is key. If we act decisively, they will retreat before engaging our main forces." Fleets moved with precision, sensors tracked enemy movements, and the Arvians were forced into a position of disadvantage. The strategy worked flawlessly. Within hours, the incursion was halted, the Arvian fleet retreated, and Zitharan colonies remained secure. The council erupted in astonishment. Delegates who had doubted the humans' capabilities now whispered in admiration. Kale, however, turned to Jadden, his violet eyes reflecting a mix of pride and begrudging respect. "You have done what I thought impossible," he said. "You have managed this crisis not with force but with insight and patience. Humans, perhaps I misjudged your species. Understanding, strategy, and cooperation are more important than brute force. You walk through mockery, tests, and crises without faltering. You remain calm, composed, and effective. How do you maintain such poise?" He had always believed that wit, strategy, and mockery could dominate other species. Yet here was a human who had demonstrated a new kind of power, subtle, quiet, and enduring. Kale realized that the young human had not only survived the trials but had redefined strength in his eyes. The two spent the next hours reviewing the crisis response, discussing strategies for future security, and refining coordination between human and Zitharan forces. Jadden's input was insightful, practical, and adaptable, offering solutions that neither Zitharan tradition nor human experience alone could have produced. By evening, the council reconvened to assess the day's outcomes. Delegates praised the coordination and effectiveness of the response, marveling at the unprecedented collaboration between species. Kale observed Jadden quietly, noting how the human did not seek attention or accolades. Instead, he moved calmly, contributing where necessary, guiding outcomes with quiet authority rather than overt command. After the council adjourned, Kale approached Jadden once more. "I owe you an acknowledgement," he said. "Your actions today have saved lives, secured alliances, and prevented disaster. You have earned my respect." Cooperation achieves more than domination. Jadden had walked past mockery, survived tests, and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, wiser, and more capable than anyone in the palace had expected. As night fell over Zithra Prime, the palace glowed softly under the twin suns. Jadden walked through the gardens once again, moving silently and deliberately. Kale followed at a distance, watching, learning, and reflecting on what he had witnessed. He understood that humans were not a species to be underestimated. They could endure, adapt, and succeed where arrogance or strength alone might fail. The young prince stepped beside the human as they overlooked the palace grounds. "You walk silently, calmly, even after everything," Kale said. "It is remarkable." The prince realized that he had learned something invaluable. True strength could manifest in quiet, patient, and intelligent ways. For the first time, they walked together through the palace grounds, not as adversaries, but as equals in thought and purpose. The human had proven that intelligence, patience, and dignity could command respect even in the face of ridicule, and the young prince had learned to recognize and value that strength. By the end of the night, the palace of Zithra Prime was calm. Delegates had returned to their quarters, and the stars above shimmered in the alien sky. Jadden Cross remained composed, patient, and vigilant, knowing that future challenges would come. Yet he had already demonstrated the quiet power of humanity, the ability to act wisely, endure trials, and earn respect without force or arrogance. Kale, standing beside him one last time, finally admitted it fully to himself. Humans were not weak, naive, or insignificant. They possessed a strength of mind, patience, and resilience that few species could match. And in that moment, the foundation of a new alliance, built on mutual respect and understanding, was quietly laid. As they parted for the evening, Kale spoke softly. "You have walked past mockery, tests, and challenges, and emerged not just unbroken, but greater than I imagined. Strength comes in many forms," he said, "and sometimes the quietest voice carries the most weight." Humans were not to be measured by appearances, insult, or expectation. They were to be observed, learned from, and when necessary, followed. And in that realization, Kale felt a sense of both wonder and humility. The 19-year-old alien prince had mocked the human, yet he had been quietly taught one of the most important lessons of his life: that true power often lies not in domination or wit, but in patience, intelligence, and the quiet strength to act with dignity. As Jadden disappeared into the soft glow of the palace gardens, the palace itself seemed to hum in agreement, a silent witness to the rise of a human who had walked past mockery, survived trials, and proven that the universe often underestimated humanity at its own peril.